Are you ready? It's time for the Sudbury MMA Podcast.
How's it going, guys? John Cole here from Sudbury MMA, and I am with, actually I was going to say Pipetron, but like we've recently learned that she has a new nickname, and it is the Piper Power. Piper Power, that's the kids, with the kids in New Sudbury, South End have started nicknaming her Piper Power.
Crushing it.
And then of course we have Shae here as well, and me and Shae just finished a thing for one of her school projects, and it was talking about like martial arts, and it kind of made me think like, man, I bet you a lot of people are wondering the same kind of questions that she was asking me, but I think a lot of people, I bet you, are wondering why our two kids instructors, we're just missing Sonia here too, and Natasha, but why did our kids instructors start martial arts? So I will ask each of you guys.
Oh my God, I can do this.
Yeah. So like, you gotta make sure to talk loud, Piper, because my recording skills are not the best here. But Piper, what got you started in martial arts? And let everybody know what it is about martial arts you loved, when you started, why you started, etc., etc.
I started martial arts when I was about 8 years old. I actually saw it at the Rib Fest here in Sudbury, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever because they had a mascot and everything. And I was like living for this martial art that it was grappling on the ground, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I remember going to my first class, and I was like wearing a hoodie up to my neck and long pants. And by the end of the class, like I was dying of heat, but I remember it being like the coolest thing I've ever done and wanting to go back for like the rest of the week. And then from there on, like I swear I just never stopped training for like 3 months. And then I felt bad one day, like I got sick and my parents were like, no, take the night off. And I was like, I need to train. I'm going to be good one day. And I remember it being like this thing of like commitment from day one.
And Piper, how old were you, Piper?
I was 8 years old.
Yeah, and how old are you now?
I'm 17.
Yeah, guys, so like 9 years already. It's actually it's pretty amazing.
Oh.
And almost hitting the decade mark.
I'm getting there. So close.
What about you, Shae?
My story is actually very bizarre. So, my dad used to train martial arts when he was little, Goju Karate to be specific, and he's always wanted me to train. So at a young age, he asked me if I wanted to train, and my best friend told me it was lame if my entire family came to do martial arts with me. So me cracking under peer pressure.
Your friend said, oh, yeah, because you didn't come right away.
I didn't, but this is way before that. So there's two stories to this. So I didn't do it anyway, and I regretted it. But this friend was my best friend, thought she was really cool, so I stuck through. A couple years later, I got home one day from school, and my dad's like, Cheyenne, guess what? We signed up the family for martial arts classes. And it was very random. And he goes, you have to go to them. And I really didn't want to at first because I didn't see a point in doing it. I'm like, I didn't do this 5 years ago. I'm not going to do it now. And he's like, you know what, Cheyenne? If you want to do the other sport, which at the time, this is going to sound super lame, but I wanted to do competitive kayaking. I know.
I wish there was video of this right now, because me and Piper just looked at each other like, what?
I didn't know it was a thing either. My friend wanted me to get into it, but whatever.
Kayaking.
I know. I thought it was cool that you got to push people.
Guys, want to do the dragon boat?
Dragon boat races every
I thought
year.
it was cool that you got to push people over, or what I was told, that you got to push them like over and keep going. I'm super competitive.
I'm gonna Google.
So I know
kayaking.
I've never actually looked into it more than that. And my dad's like, hey, if you want to do that, you need to do a minimum of 3 classes. So I'm like, you know what? Give a dog a bone. I'm gonna come try martial arts. So my first class, me and my sister went, and we didn't end up being partners. And I remember being confused as all heck, and they were telling us to punch, and I was just swinging for the hills and throwing my feet up in the air. And I remember...
That's also known as kicking.
Well, it didn't look like it, that much I could promise you. And anyway, and I remember going home that night, and my dad's like, how was it? And I remember thinking, like, I don't understand this. We're hitting, like, foam squares, and, like, I don't see a point. And he goes, Cheyenne, you promised me 3 times, go do your 3 times. So the second time I went, I had a partner who elaborated a little bit more on what I had to do, who was one of my first friends here, actually. And so I'm like, this is semi-enjoyable. I started understanding it. And then the third one, I was explained in super detail what I had to do. And I remember looking at him and thinking, like, you know so much. And he was having a lot of fun. And I'm like, I'm going to have a lot of fun if I keep doing this. So as I kept coming to classes, I'm like, if I stop, I'm not going to realize, like, I'm never going to see how good I could have became. And, like, found out if I really, truly enjoyed it. So I kept coming week after week, and I just fell in love with the sport. Well, the discipline of Muay Thai, which is the first one I started. And then I eventually started doing karate and jiu-jitsu. And at one point, I was training here every single day of the week. And I fell in love with it. Like, this became my everyday. It became my passion. It was basically all I talked about. And to this day, my best friends were made here. And we're still best friends.
I didn't know we were best friends.
John, you're my favorite person in the world.
There we go.
So
This is true, guys. This is true.
This is.
I am her favorite person.
We have friendship bracelets.
Hear that, Caroline? So, interestingly, I'll give you guys my story because Shae asked me, when did I start, et cetera, et cetera. I started at 11 years old, and she's like, so what drove you? What made you want to start martial arts? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I was watching movies, American Ninja, Karate Kid, all that cool stuff, and I'm like, I was the guy, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and I'm out in my backyard hiding weapons. So I'd be like making weapons in the backyard, like taking my dad's saw, making nunchucks, and I'd be the guy with the chain and the piece, nailing the chain into the nunchuck, and then I'd be like practicing nunchucks in my garage in secret because I thought I was a ninja. And I'm sitting there, and I'd try and make swords, and I would try and make ninja stars, and I just, it's unbelievable the amount of work I put into these things. And then, according to the movies, your weapons had to be hidden somewhere where no one else found them. I even made a horrible, and I'm talking horrible, ninja mask, and I thought, guys, that I was going to be a ninja. So anyway, I did this, and I used to beg my parents to bring me, and then finally they signed me up at some kung fu school. Actually, it wasn't even a school. It was a guy who was apparently a black belt who was going to teach me kung fu. And I was like, it was tiger style kung fu, he told me, and I was like super jacked. And basically I started then, and I, kind of continued ever since then. And, so I'll kind of move into the next topic because I think this is kind of funny. She's like, well, what motivated you to keep training at a young age? And I'm like, well, I had this absolute infatuation with ninjas and Japan and all this kind of, cool stuff that I honestly thought that I was eventually going to be discovered by a Japanese master who was going to be like, you are the chosen one to carry on this ninja art and, this karate, jiu-jitsu, martial art thing that, and I was like, man, I can't wait till this guy finds me. It's going to be cool. And then I'm like, I'm going to go to Japan, and I'm going to move there. And that's actually what motivated me to train at 11 years old. I'm like, man, I'm going to learn Japanese and all this kind of stuff. And that was my motivation for a long time until about, 15, 16 when I kind of figured that, I don't think I'm going to be a ninja. I can't climb walls. And parkour didn't exist back then. So, I had to turn my mind to other types of competition. What about you, Piper? What kept you training at a young age?
Honestly, I swear my motivation was beating up the boys. Because
I think that's still your motivation.
A little bit. But when I started as a kid, I probably had the worst mushroom cut possible, and nobody knew I was a girl.
I'm going to attest to that worst mushroom cut possible.
Oh, it was a rough one. So I remember I used to train, and we do a game like King of the Hill, and I remember I'd sweep someone over when I started getting good, and I remember saying to them, oh yeah, and I'm a girl, and I'd send them to the back of the line feeling all confident and cool because a girl just beat up a guy. And I remember getting into competition at around 11 and 12, and that's when my drive changed from just beating up boys to beating up everyone, because I thought I was this awesome competitor. I won my first tournament it was nothing, and I just kept fighting all the other ones after that. And I was like, yo, silver, gold, every tournament. I'm crushing it. I'm doing awesome. And I lived for competition for 2-3 years. And then I slowly got out of it, but getting back into it, it's just another drive for me to go forward and get better. I love it.
Awesome. Shae, you didn't start at 8 or 9. But what, how old were you?
I started at 15.
Yeah, so like what kept you going like at 15 or something? Because that's a tough age. You got a lot of like competing priorities at 15.
I was super awkward at 15. When I first started training, like I said, I had a bit of a harder time with it, and then I just genuinely started enjoying it. And when I started enjoying it, I'm very competitive, so I wanted to see to what extent I could become really good at this. And I remember one day I was training with Nick, actually, and Nick was holding pads for me, and I kicked. And he's like, you have a really good power kick. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, oh, well, thank you. That's so kind. And he asked me, he's like, do you ever think you're going to compete one day? And he was so honest when he asked me, and it was super cool because he looked at me like I had this fantastic potential that I hadn't seen. I was doing it because I loved it and because I wanted to get really good. And he's just like, you should. And you should keep training with us. So I kept training, and every day I seen him, he's like, how's the fighter grind? And I really liked hearing that, and just to be a part of this fantastic group of people who were excited to see you every day and who wanted to train with you every day, got me really motivated. And then from there, you started meeting more people, making more friends, and just falling more in love with the sport. And that's kind of why I kept going, I guess.
That's awesome. I know it's getting late, guys. I know Piper's Ride's here, and it's I don't even know what time it is right now. But anyway, guys, we have some great kids instructors here, Sudbury MMA. These two, of course, we have Natasha, we have Sonia, who's not here today, and what's that? Chris Cote, yeah, South End. I think I teach kids classes once in a while too. So guys, you know what? I know that the parents, the kids love these two. If you haven't met them, hopefully you got to know them a little bit better. And if you have any questions, don't be shy to ask them. They're more than happy to share their passions with you, your children, and anyone else who feels like listening. So that being said, everybody have a great night.
Have a great night, guys.
See you guys soon. Take care.